Hi, welcome everybody back to another episode of the Big Doug and Carmi Show, your one-stop shop for all things Commanders. If you're watching this on YouTube, make sure that you subscribe, hit that notification bell so you never miss an episode like today's episode with Rich Hribar. Rich, how are you?
Doing good. It's great to finally make this happen. We kind of danced around schedules over the summer, but I was glad we got to squeeze it in, right in the 11th hour of summer.
I am too, and it's perfect because we're really loading up for fantasy football this week. Help everybody win their home leagues as we ramp back up before the season really gets kicked off. First time on the show, Rich, we like to get to know folk. Tell us how you got started in this crazy business.
Yeah, I mean, I actually was running a hydraulic seal production company. I was doing like the sales behind the scenes, like we're already working with spreadsheets and stuff like that already. Was just like tweeting different stats and stuff, and got spotted by Denny Carter, who is a Maryland, in the Maryland area in Virginia there. So he gave me my first job at XN Sports and kind of just gravitated from there. Just got the ball rolling. I started working full time about 8 years ago at NBC, and now I've been with Warren for the last 6 years at Sharp Football. So I've been blessed. Definitely don't take it for granted that I get to do this, even though like the season's starting and it's like, oh, we got to go back to work and do all this stuff. Like I still always got to remind myself, like you're really lucky to get to do this.
You said you've been with Warren for how long now?
This is the sixth season.
Okay. Warren comes on next Tuesday. Any advice?
Oh yeah, Warren's great. Yeah, you could you listen. You whatever time you think you're gonna have, you'd probably want to go a little bit longer.
I got you. All right. Let's see. There's so many different ways to play now, Rich. Do you have a favorite way to play?
No. I mean, I have like probably like league preferences, but I think that no matter what, you just adjust to like what you sign up for, right? Like a lot of times you get in these leagues and some people will complain about the settings. Like, well, why'd you sign up for it then? Like you already see the settings. So I adjust my play style kind of, to the game. But yeah, I mean, I don't mind as long as it's not like antiquated. Like these touchdown only leagues and stuff that the fantasy forefathers created before when they had to get all the stats out of a newspaper or could only count touchdowns. I need a little more than that.
How many best ball leagues will you have completed by the time we hit the regular season?
Only like a little, like around like a little over 100. I'm pretty much more of a casual player. I guess some people hear 100 and they're like, that's not casual, but in the best ball context, it's
That's
casual.
right.
I'm not really max entering these contests. I'm just keeping like a consistent flow as one to get like some skin in the game, but also just to keep like a pulse of like getting live reps, right? Of like knowing where pockets of players go into a draft. It's always moving more in these than like if you were to sign up and do like mock drafts like back in the day, like when like my father-in-law still does that today, gets his draft slot and goes and does 100 mock drafts. I'm like, you could just play like with real people that are playing and figure out, like where the pockets of these players goes. That's how I like to use it, just to get like keep a consistent pulse on drafting.
Most people will be doing their fantasy home leagues this week. So I thought we could kind of go through some of the keys to doing there. What is your biggest recommendation for somebody that may be first or second year players in a home league?
Well, one like I kind of hit upon is like just really understanding your league settings, right? Like that's gonna really shape how you want to approach drafting paired with your draft slot. Is it full PPR? Do you get points per carry? Is it like points first downs? Is there bonuses like these arbitrary yardage bonuses like we get on a site like DraftKings, even in DFS? How many players are you forced to start at each position? How many flexes are there? Like these are all things that really kind of shape how you want to approach building out your draft and how you target positions, right? Like, if you're playing an FFPC with the tight end premium, it completely changes the dynamics of not only Brock Bowers and Trey McBride where they go, but even distances like those two guys from like a George Kittle who hasn't had 80 plus catches and since 2019. So there's just all these little nuances that go like around your scoring and forced lineup settings. Like that, please, like no matter what you do, like always start there.
We'll get to the tight ends because I think the Kittle conversation is interesting for this year. But let's just start right up at the top with the quarterbacks. One, do you like super flex leagues?
Oh yeah, I love them absolutely. Obviously, over the course of time, like quarterbacks gotten a little depreciated for fantasy football. And in this year, even while we're kind of back, like to where like we've got a little bit of interest more in these top end quarterbacks, it's still a very finite group. You really only have the top big four, and then you have like a little bit of a skip to Joe Burrow. But then there's a pretty big gap from like QB6 to QB20. It's pretty flat. And in your one QB leagues, like a lot of these guys just aren't going to get drafted or get used. You can always find these guys usable weeks on the waiver. It just makes the position a lot more viable in terms of adding a quarterback and a super flex, making the drafts also different as well, because each one is different. Like sometimes you'll get drafts where quarterbacks are aggressively picked. Sometimes you'll have it where it's a little bit of a lull, and it just changes the dynamic of roster composition adding it.
If you're picking in the top 7, I mean, in a super flex, you almost have to make sure you get one of those top 4 guys you're talking about: Burrow, Allen, Mahomes, and Daniels.
Yeah, I would have like Burrows like his own little kind of mini tier, like his own little island, because he doesn't rush as much as the other
Right.
guys, as Allen, Hurts, Lamar, and Jaden Daniels. And all those guys give you also like the dual threat of having productive passing seasons with their rushing. That's how you kind of break fantasy football. Like when you go back to like 2010 Michael Vick or like 2015 Cam Newton, Lamar last year, right? Like these are all guys that not only give you that big rushing equity, but they could even get the 30 passing touchdowns and potentially more. And it's just really hard to combat those guys who are able to do that. Burrow's not a non-zero in the rushing department, but his rushing is a lot more inconsistent. So I do think there's a little bit of a gap here. Like Burrow still has to throw. He has to flirt with 40 passing touchdowns basically every single season to kind of combat the guys that are giving you the rushing production, and flirt with the double-digit rushing touchdowns too as well. But just because it's so weighted, unless you're in a league that does the 6-point passing touchdowns, the rushing weight with the old school Konami code, when I wrote it up in 2013, like it's just too hard when it's paired with the passing. Like Justin Fields is like an old school Konami guy. Like he's probably not going to throw 30 passing touchdowns. He's definitely not throwing 40. But these other guys now, the game has changed to where you're getting productive passing production out of these top end guys with the rushing, and it's really hard to beat those guys.
For a guy like Jaden Daniels, who rushed for so many yards last year, it feels like there's 2 schools of thought, right? One is the coaching staff can't want him to run that much this year. The other school of thought is, well, they tried that with Lamar in his second year, I believe, and said, you know what? Why would we do that when one of his best attributes is running the ball? Are you worried that Jaden takes a bit of a step back if they ask him to not run the ball as much?
No, because I think it just in his nature, even if they scale
Right.
back the designed
Yeah.
rushing stuff, that he's got such a good scramble history, even going back to college. It's just like you said, it's part of his DNA. It's just part of his fabric. It's hard to like coach that completely out. You can put a player in a good position to like maybe not have as much risk associated with it, but players are going to play like their style. You should want to enhance what a player does well, and like why neuter like part of the best aspects of Jaden Daniels games. I mean, there were so many plays last year where Jaden Daniels had like a free rusher, and he turns it into like a 40-yard game. Like I think like week 3 they played the Browns. He had like a free rusher come off the edge, totally just makes the pass rusher go past him, and he's just out the gates because it's man coverage behind him. No one has contained on him, and he's out the gates for 40 yards. It's just really hard to take that away. That's like something like he has just in his back pocket. That's really hard to pull away.
If you don't get one of those guys early, I always am like, I say, okay, I'm going to wait then. I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to wait a while. But it's like, I've got to have like William Wallace in my head telling me to hold,
Yeah.
hold, hold, because I get itchy with my finger trying to press the quarterback button. What is kind of the rule of thumb there if you don't get one of those guys early?
Yeah, I think especially this year, like you said, doing the Braveheart meme, that you just want to wait. I wrote it up this way: if you don't get one of the top 4 guys and don't catch Burrow falling, you should wait. And then my next advice was wait longer. Like you
Right.
continue, like remind yourself you don't have to roster fill, because especially this year, I just look at the viability, and we're talking like 1 QB. You can apply this to 2 QBs too, just when you're talking about the specific tiers. But when you get to like QB7, QB8, and then you look at where and you get like when you get to like QB 18, QB 19, QB 20, there's just not like a huge delta between those guys. There's not a huge gap. Like I think I can make an argument for a lot of the guys they're even going, QB 17, QB 18, QB 19. Like these are good players who could run into production, CJ Strouds and Justin Herberts, or even Caleb Williams with Ben Johnson, Trevor Lawrence with Liam Cohen. Like it's easy to make kind of the bull case for these guys, and then they're going so cheap. And if you don't get one of these guys off to a hot start, you just throw them back into the barrel in one QB and pick up another dude that has either a good matchup or like a softer schedule or comes out of the gates a little bit hotter. There's just a lot more flexibility. So this year, especially, I always encourage people like, not only do you want to wait, remind yourself when you're going to pick, just keep waiting longer.
That's right. Usually there is a rookie or two that is worth drafting at the quarterback spot. Cam Ward feels like the least talked about first round quarterback ever. But I think he has an opportunity at ADP to kind of be worth a dart throw late. You probably just be picking him up off of waiver wires, but what's the outlook on Cam Ward as a guy that's useful in fantasy this year?
Yeah, he has potential. He's another one of those guys that has mobility, but isn't like a consistent runner. He wants to throw the rock. Like this is a guy that he's got that arrogant arm strength that we label it. Like he just has a lot of throws where he probably will need to pull this in. Like it's Josh Allen started his career like this, coming out of obviously Wyoming, where he had just such prestige arm strength and played at a level of competition that were like he'd get away with stuff. Now Cam Ward played at a higher level of competition, but there's a lot of throws where he just said like, I know I can make this throw and I can get away with this. But in the NFL, like that's going to get pulled in. We saw a guy like Josh Allen like acquiesce and adjust his game as it went on. I think we'll see that with Cam Ward a little bit, and then maybe he starts to run a little bit. But I do like the infrastructure a lot. I wish we had a little bit more receiving talent with Tennessee to maybe propel him. We've got Calvin Ridley, and then we're really looking at like, all right, is Ayamanor going to make a jump this year? Is Okonkwo going to be able to make a jump in a contract year? Those are a little thinner bets. I do like the offensive line, what they did. Hopefully they have a little bit better luck in terms of health. Like Cushenberry was in and out of the lineup. You've got, Latham in year 2. They add Dan Moore, who we can look at Dan Moore and not be excited about him, but he's an upgrade over what they put out at left tackle last year. So I do like a little bit of the infrastructure there as well, but he's like a guy like I put like him in a bucket with like Michael Penix and like JJ McCarthy. Those are like your upside bets when you say like we talk about waiting and waiting longer, and if you end up getting like froze out of the position, like those are still guys to make like calculated bets on that you could still offer a little bit of upside too.
And give you a little bit of that stack availability too, right? Like if you take Drake London early and pair him with Penix, I mean, how important? I know people love the stacks on best ball. Are they as important in your home league?
No,
Right.
not as much. It's always fun to like to do it. I always never mind having like the double bubble, especially like in the playoffs. Having those two guys that can just go nuclear together. I always love having the quarterback battery, but it's not necessary in your home leagues at all.
Running back hero or running back zero?
This year I've been a little bit more aggressive at running back than I have in years past, and I think it just coincides the number of areas. So we've seen now NFL offenses start to find some answers. It's funny. The NFL is so cyclical, right? Like, when you look at the pop off for like anti-fragility and like zero RB, it started around like that 2015 period where we started to get more of an influx of spread offenses, 11 personnel, the wide receiver 3 being like a focal point of the offense. Now, as teams kind of transition and say, well, how do we slow down all these big plays? And well, all right, we're going to do the Vic Fangio. We're going to play a lot of, cover 6, a lot of we'll play a lot of quarters, a lot of, match coverage and take away these big plays, make teams throw underneath. And the way offenses have started to kind of combat that now is saying, hey, if you want to play lighter defense, like we're going to start playing heavier sets. We saw 2 tight ends go up a lot last year. We're going to start running the football a lot more. So that's also like been a little bit of a signal for the rushing game. But I also just think we have like a lot better running back landscape in terms of talent than we probably had in the last decade. Obviously, this draft class was a big part of it, adding Jainty and Hampton as round 1 guys, Harvey and Henderson as like explosive type players. We've got just a litany of guys on their rookie contracts who are viable players, Bijan, Jahmyr Gibbs, Bucky Irving, Chase Brown, then you talk about like the viable vets we still have. We still have Christian McCaffrey. We still have Saquon. We have, Devin Achane as a part of that rookie group. Like it's running back's just a lot better right now. And then the other thing like that offensive counter has started one of the things they've started to do is like, hey, The wide receiver 3 is not as important to our offense anymore because we're playing heavier sets. What do we need to do to combat that? They've started to move their wide receiver 1s around more. We're starting to see wide receiver 1s not be that prototypical Julio Jones X receiver, that AJ Green, that Calvin Johnson. Now we're starting to see like these lead fantasy wide receivers. They're guys who get into the slot. They get these free squares a little bit, these behind the line of scrimmage targets. I mean, the last 7 wide receivers, I mean, they've all been in the slot 20% or more. Jamar Chase is like the biggest testament of this in his career. If you just follow Jamar Chase's career in the NFL, he opens up as a rookie as just this dude that's just torching dudes downfield, big play after big play. And the team started to take that away from the Bengals offense. They said, hey, we just want to get the ball to our best player. How do we do that? We find ways to do that. And that's how NFL offenses have started to operate with their wide receiver 1s. So it's made kind of like, it's almost like an inverse. I almost think like hero wide receiver, and not to the extremes we used to do hero or anchor running back, but I like, there's a lot of times this year where I might only have 1 to 2 wide receivers through like 4 or 5 rounds this year, which would have been like a huge, I would never do that in years past, but I do think the strength of wide receiver being like rounds 5 through 10, especially in your home leagues where you just have so much value at the position, it's a lot easier to get like one of these anchor wide receivers, get some good running back play, add an elite quarterback, maybe it falls to you, add maybe a Kittle, and then just start hammering wide receiver like in the middle rounds.
You mentioned 2 names there, um, Saquon Barkley and Christian McCaffrey. Saquon Barkley is interesting. I've had a lot of people on the show that remind me that usually there's a drop off from a guy, 1 that went to the Super Bowl, 2 that carried the rock as many times as he did last year. So I'm curious where you stand on that. And then Christian McCaffrey is a guy that I just refused to draft. It's been that way for years. Maybe that's irresponsible of me to do it that way. I just can't get it out of my head. Do you have any guys like that yourself?
Not so much like guys that I'm just like outright like I'll never draft that guy. I'm always someone that's like say, hey, there's always a price point where I'm willing to look at it, to look at a player. But I mean, Saquon, the infrastructure still is good. Like it's still, you know, this Eagles run game. We'll see, you know, when Landon Dickerson gets back on the field. The thing that I think that the most concerning part about Saquon is like obviously when you have one of these seasons, like these historical seasons, we know there's just natural pullback. Like guys just don't rush for 2,000 yards back to back years. And the way he did it with the long touchdown runs, right? It's a little hard to sustain that when you have the most you know, touchdowns outside the red zone since Chris Johnson, the CJ2K days. It's just hard to like roll that over. The things that I think are concerning about Saquon, because I don't really care about the 400 touch mark thing. I think that's more of a that's kind of an arbitrary number. What you care about with running backs is always the next touch, right? It's not necessarily the guy at 400 touches. It's the running back position. It's always the next touch. But with Saquon, the 2 areas I think are the most concerning is that last year we had 2 questions that he was able to mask with the long touchdown runs. One was we didn't think he'd be used as a receiver as heavily, joining the Eagles who don't have to throw a lot and they have more of condensed passing tree and they have a mobile quarterback. And that did happen last year. I mean, he had his lowest target rate per route run of his career. And even that was even lower because he only played so few snaps with the Eagles had everyone healthy. I mean, the Eagles had Goddard, AJ Brown, and Devontae Smith all missed time during the season. So I don't think he has the receiving profile as some of the other running backs that have the round 1. Like, I just don't think he's going to get the 70 target mark on this Eagles offense. And the other thing that we were worried about last year that he was able to cover the long touchdowns is the tush push factor, right? Like we knew the tush push was going to be a thing for him, and he only had 3 carries from the 1 yard line. So if he has a reduction of those long touchdowns in the tush push, which it still lives, is still kind of like a thorn in his side. Like that's how you just kind of marry those things up. And it's like, all right, like this is where there's a little bit fragility. He's not catching as many passes as the other backs, and he's not scoring as many touchdowns as potentially the other backs because he's not living off the long touchdowns as much. That's a little bit of the concern. I do get the McCaffrey stuff. Like if you're not taking him, I think, you know, fantasy football largely is not very binary, but I think McCaffrey is like one of the few binary players we have. Like if you're betting against me, you're just saying, hey, I don't want to deal with if this guy's going to miss time. But I understand like while he's playing, like he's in a perfect like setup here in this Shanahan offense. All the running backs are hurt. They have got a glorious schedule. They're probably going to score a lot of points. He's going to catch a lot of passes. But you just don't want to deal with the missed time. So I do understand it, especially in a rich draft class like this, where I just laid out all those good running backs.
Where do you stand on James Cook?
I'm still in to a degree, obviously, again, because Here's the thing with fantasy gamers. I remind everyone, regression happens, but it's not a boogeyman. Like we just did a little bit with Saquon, right? Like it's not a complete boogeyman though. Like you have to run a high for it. So like when you look at James Cook, his first 3 years completely line up with Aaron Jones. Like he's a very Aaron Jones-ish player. And Aaron Jones, I think, had 19 touchdowns in year 3. And then he came back and he only scored 12 in year 4, right? Like he did score fewer touchdowns, but he still scored. Like this is still the Buffalo Bills. We know they're going to push to be at, probably what top 1 to 8 in the league in offensive touchdowns. So I don't want to let him go too far. We're going to price in some regression. But like this is still a player I think from a per touch opportunity stance is still really effective.
Tell me why people are more hyped up about McBride than Kittle, because to me, Kittle's one of the best fantasy values that we have right now on a team other than McCaffrey, to your point. They don't got much early on with some of the injuries they've dealt with. You mentioned earlier about the 80 catches. To me, and I know we're just projecting, but it feels like it could be a career type year for him.
For Kittle?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, with Kittle, I think just the gap between the other two, and I have them a little bit tighter than the market, but I do think the other two, if you're just betting on one blind career arc, you've got two younger players. And I think if you're just talking about like these two other players, McBride and Bowers, have more of a projectable pipeline to get to like 150 plus targets than like Kittle will in the Shanahan offense, just because like they're probably not going to be top half in pass attempts, in dropbacks. The schedule is relatively easy, so you don't get that volume, but the layout's just as good as kind of where we left off. Obviously, we have CMC coming back, but we still have a wide receiver room that's largely in limbo. I mean, we don't know when Juwan Jennings is going to come back from this calf injury or hold in or marriage of the two things. We don't know when Ayuk's going to be back on the field fully healthy, and Ricky Pearsall is a year 2 player. So I still think when you're looking at just from a pass catcher talent stance, Kittle is their best pass catcher entering the season, and the 49ers definitely are probably going to flow a lot through him. And the other thing, too, is I think that separates him from the other two guys in terms of why the other two guys are just valued higher. It's the consistent missed time. I mean, this is a guy that has missed multiple games basically every year, too. What's funny is he had the same exact procedure done as Christian McCaffrey. It's just no one cares. Like,
Okay.
yeah. He went over and dealt with that, tendinosis, not tendonitis. I think it gets misreported that both those guys had that, but they both had tendinosis and not tendonitis. Listen, I'm not a doctor. I'm not going to play one here either, but I do think that Kittle from a value stance makes a lot more sense from an ADP stance to get more than him than the other two guys, just where he goes. He goes into like a pocket where wide receiver really kind of flattens out. I've almost labeled it the wide receiver dead zone this year, where we used to have the running back dead zone. I really feel like we have that with wide receiver this year. And then wide receiver really ramps up with value. So I have been getting Kittle a little bit more along with like those elite quarterbacks in that like round 3 area where wide receiver really, I feel like kind of drops off a little bit.
It is a Commanders podcast outside of Jaden Daniels. Are there any Commanders that you're interested in this year?
Well, listen, I was hammering Ja'Cory Krosky
Yeah.
Barrett up until this last week. When the cool kids all found out, and then now he's probably going to be going into the same round area where like Brian Robinson Jr. went. I'm really curious to see how it plays out. This is a player I really liked in college. I think if he would have lost that redshirt year, we would have seen him probably up his draft stock to be. I don't think he would have gotten over day 3 due to the age stuff, but I think he probably would have been like a round 5 guy, and that mix of running backs when we start to see all those guys start to go off the board, because this is an explosive player. I love his running style. Not going to probably catch a lot of passes. Eckler's going to hold that role, and then the question is now, the difference between him and the Brian Robinson role is he can be more effective per carry than Brian Robinson, but are we going to see Chris Rodriguez kind of rear his head in near the goal line? They outright asked Dan Quinn this last week, and he kind of said, yeah, like we're going to be considering Chris Rodriguez near the goal line. And this is a team that already, think about the Commanders aren't sneaking up on anyone this year. They, obviously have the high draft pick. Jaden Daniels smashes. They took advantage of what ended up being the easiest schedule in the NFL last year. Now they go and they face a litany of teams that made the playoffs last year. Schedule's much harder. Last year, they were 7th in the NFL in rate of snaps led. But even with all those snaps led, they were only 19th in running back carries last year. So, like, it's a little bit of fragility there. You add Deebo Samuel, too, with Jaden Daniels. This is a team that's probably going to have 150 non-running back runs as well. So he kind of now falls into this like area. Like, is there like a true fantasy role for him? It was cool when we were drafting like round 14 and like you're
Yes.
getting like this bullet, but now do you have to take him in a spot in the drafts now where we talk about like receivers are really hot, where he's like kind of jumped up to? And we have this player that doesn't have a pipeline for receptions, that doesn't have a true pipeline for touchdowns. There's a little bit of a fragility there. I still like the player. I'll still draft him on certain team builds, but I fear that I've gotten the most Jacory Krosky merit early on. And then the other guy I do think that still is a really good value is the guy we talked about in that stance is Deebo Samuel. If there was one offense Deebo Samuel could have transitioned to from Kyle Shanahan that makes a lot of sense for his skill set, it is this Washington Commanders offense. I mean, you look at every year of Cliff Kingsbury's career coaching, wide receiver screen targets, wide receiver targets behind line of scrimmage, slant targets, like top 5, top 10 every year. The Commanders last year were really kind of hamstrung as they just didn't have a pass catcher that could do anything with the football in his hands last year. One of my favorite stats from last year is no matter the greatest year, as great as Jaden Daniels was last year, he only had 3 passing touchdowns last year where the receiver ran the ball into the end zone on his own.
Right.
The only 2 quarterbacks that had fewer were Cooper Rush and Trevor Lawrence that qualified for quarterback rating, and those guys didn't even play a whole year. There's a reason like why they set out to get a guy like Deebo Samuel. They just didn't have that type of player in their offense. I think they probably were hoping like Luke McCaffrey was going to have some kind of role, but like you could use as a late round pick, like just never really happened in year one. Noah Brown, not that guy. Olamide Zaccheaus, not that guy. Like, so I think adding Deebo Samuel to this offense, he's the cheapest he's ever been now for fantasy purposes in his career. And then people forget the first 7 weeks of last year, he was a good fantasy player. He picks up the pneumonia, has a little bit of a calf issue, and he just kind of never is the same through the rest of the season. And who knows, mentally, he might have even checked out with the 49ers being in the spot that they were. Kind of maybe he already was saying, hey, I've got a foot out of the door here. We'll see what happens. But I do think that he adds a layer to the Commanders offense that they were just desperately thirsty for last year in that offense. And it got covered up because of how like easy their schedule was, and they really weren't pressed for it. But he adds a dynamic that they really severely missed in their receiving core.
Zach Ertz is a guy that gets no yak. They call him No Yak Zach for a reason. However, at the end of last year, he did nothing but catch touchdowns down the stretch. At ADP, does Ertz intrigue you at all?
I think he's one of those guys, is that deep bucket of tight ends. Like if you just miss out, you can just add him and he's like a floor based play. I do think the addition of Deebo probably hurts him a little bit, makes him a little more touchdown dependent. Just because, like I said, Deebo is just something that offense needed. And you factor in the age a little bit too, but I don't have a problem if anyone's just like, hey, I'm at the end of my draft. I just need a dude that is going to be out there and he's in a good offense, right? So like you're just trying to get some attachment to a guy that can just get you something. And so I have no problem with it.
All right, I like to play this game at the end of these shows. Would you rather? I use football guys for the ADP on this one. So at ADP, do you prefer Derrick Henry at 11 or DeAndre Swift at 61?
Oh, I still prefer Derrick Henry, just for the league winning kind of upside. And one of the things I've tried to do, and I'm sorry if this is like I'm supposed to be like a rapid fire thing, because
No, no,
I
no.
don't have that gene in me.
Yeah.
But I think about like players that offer like power law players or players that can like win leagues. Like DeAndre Swift, I think could potentially be like a value at ADP, but I don't really see a path where like DeAndre Swift, like on his own merit, is like a player like you. I feel like I have to have. Derrick Henry's still in just like the perfect system for him, and he's not slowed down. One of these things with like age, like I try to factor in, and I'm trying to be a little bit more lenient on age anyways, because just we're in an era where these players are spending millions of dollars on their bodies. Like you look at like LeBron's doing. I definitely think Tom Brady could have played till he's 50. Now Derrick Henry's a running back, but we haven't seen any efficiency dip with Derrick Henry. Like it'd be different if he was going to be 31 and like we started to see like the tackle breaking numbers like dip a little bit and some of the efficiency, but like we don't have any of that, right? So I'm a little bit less concerned about potentially his age, because this is a guy that takes care of himself. We haven't seen that dip in efficiency.
There was not a ton of exposure, but while DeAndre Swift was playing for Ben Johnson, best numbers of his career, is that anything that you've thought about there with him?
I think it's the receiving is the
Right.
what you like about him, because we also saw him, not gonna have any goal line role with Ben Johnson, and he averaged under 10 rushing attempts per game. You look at that Bears depth chart though, and you're like, well, who's pushing? Who's
Right.
pushing for touches here? And that's kind of the wide open factor here. But yeah, I can see a spot where he does end up being like a value pick though.
Brock Bowers at 17 or Laporta at 54.
I'd lean Laporta just based on the taking a tight end early stuff. It's just I've done a lot of articles on the site about this where just like the math just doesn't really add up. Those like Bowers and McBride in the second round compared, especially because the second round this year is just so much better than the second round we've had in recent years.
Mhm.
Like you have no margin of error of missing. And what I mean by that, because people say like, well, what if I take AJ Brown and he's bad? Well, if AJ Brown is just like a baseline wide receiver, that's still more valuable for a lineup than a baseline tight end, just because the position is so depressed compared to the running backs and wide receivers versus tight ends. Like they just don't score as many points. So if like even McBride and Bowers are just okay, it's not enough compared to if a wide receiver running back is okay. And that's where the opportunity cost factors in. I do like those guys when they hit the 2-3 turn if you can get them there. So if they're around that area, I have no problem drafting them. But like round 2 is still a little too rich because it's just, man, this was the best round 2 I think we've had in, man, maybe a decade or so.
Yeah, no, it's when you start looking at it, it's pretty amazing, really. Let's see. CD Lamb at 6 or George Pickens at 56.
Oh, wow. That one's tough. I'll say Pickens just based on the value, but I mean, I definitely am totally cool at taking CeeDee Lamb at
Sure.
6 as well. I'll say for the value, I've been really in on Pickens with this marriage of even at face value, if he's the same player he's been his whole career, it's an upgrade in terms of volume for the Cowboys offense and then quarterback attachment. Dak's been one of the best quarterbacks in terms of actually throwing to receivers and downfield. Then we have a couple outs, like obviously contingent value. If something were happening to CeeDee Lamb, he gets a bump. And then also like why can't George Pickens have something like we saw with T. Higgins last year where, Tyler Boyd leaves the Bengals and we see T. Higgins get access to a part of the target tree that he just didn't have access to before. I mean, the highest rate of his targets within 10 yards. I also think the Dallas offense can do stuff like that with T. Higgins. He can run a lot of these like speed outs and like hitches. He's just such a big body. Like those are freebies with a big player like that. And what if he just has another layer to his game that we haven't seen that was just hamstrung by Arthur Smith and the offenses he's been part of?
Oh, I think so. I mean, he was nasty at Georgia, and there's no reason to think that he can't. Like his route tree was much bigger. I'm a big Georgia guy, so I
Absolutely.
watch a lot. So, but I mean, the route tree at Georgia was perfectly fine. It's just the way they used him in Pittsburgh in that
Mhm.
offense didn't do him any favors. Do those two wide receivers make you more excited about Dak Prescott?
Yeah, it's just the one problem with Dak is, 32 coming off that severe hamstring injury. Like he's probably close to a 0 in the rushing game at this stage of his career.
Right.
And that's the hang up. Like anytime with those guys, they just got to throw a lot of touchdowns. He's in that big bucket of guys, right? Like, when you look at like Purdy and Jordan Love and, you've got Baker and Goff in there and Tua, like it's just kind of in that deep pot, Herbert and Stroud. Like I just like
Yeah.
those guys. I play the value game on that. Like who's going late? When can I get these guys at value?
Josh Allen at 24, Baker Mayfield at 70.
I'd still prefer Josh Allen at that point. Receiver kind of like I said levels off there a little bit. And Baker's one of these guys I'm genuinely concerned about. I think even at face value, if they rolled everything back, we were going to have some regression for the Bucks offense and his performance last year. And then, we don't know when Tristan Wirfs is going to be 100%. It all does sound positive that he's not going to get put on the pup to start the year or on IR to start the year. But then you remove Liam Cohen, and Liam Cohen what he did with Baker was have him get the football out of his hands. He is his
Mhm.
fastest time to throw since his rookie year. And Josh Grizzer's all he's talked about is like adding more vertical passing to the offense. We don't know when Godwin's going to be 100%. Obviously, they did add some insurance in the first rounder and adding Igbukah, but Mike Evans is 32. Jalen McMillan is going to probably miss half the year. There's just like a lot of moving parts where I don't love Baker at his ADP really at all. I think he fits in that bucket like of guys that we talked about. And I just don't want to take a quarterback at that price point unless it's an elite guy like we talk about Allen.
Brian Thomas Jr. at 14 or Hunter at 67.
I'll take BTJ, although I'm not down on Hunter at all. It's just, BTJ we know he's not going to come off the field. I love the Cohen edition we talked about. He's going to do that stuff for Trevor Lawrence, right? The balls will be coming out of his hands. And that's the team I think is going to be built to throw this year. They obviously have a lot of bodies that they could throw at running back. We'll see who gets traded out of there. But this offensive line is not good at all. And this defense isn't good. So I think they're kind of built to be in a lot of kind of shootout type games.
And last one, Terry at 43 or Debo at 79.
I like Debo more at cost. Obviously, I hate to be. What sucks is I hate to kind of be out on Terry McLaurin because like all we did was beg for this dude to get a quarterback, and he finally got one, and we got to see some of the upside. It's just the fact that McLaurin never had like an elite target share. Cliff, for as much good as he did last year, I would say his usage with Terry McLaurin was very questionable throughout the course of the season.
There were games where he didn't get the ball in the first half.
I mean, we need to Cliff. He doesn't have to just play left wide receiver. Like he can move. I mean, he won you a game at right wide receiver against the Bengals. Like he moved him out. It catches the bomb in the fourth quarter and it wins the game. And then just like the touchdown regression stuff, right? Like Terry McLaurin, he had 16 end zone targets. 11 of them were touchdowns. It was the highest rate for a player with that many targets of the past decade. There are 16 players that have caught over half of their double-digit end zone targets. All of them but 2 had fewer touchdowns the following season. The other factor is this holdout stuff. Now, we needed the contract today, but even going back to last year, it took a while for these guys that held out and missed preseason to get going. You look at Brandon Ayuk won. He may never have gotten going if he would have got to play. We don't know. Maybe back half the year he would have been a lot stronger. But Brandon Ayuk holds out. He's kind of lost, has one good game over 50 yards before he has the ACL injury. But you go back to CeeDee Lamb through 6 weeks, he only had one wide receiver scoring week last season. That was before Dak, got injured. Rest of the season, he had 25% of team targets, 31% target rate. It was only 21.6% before that. Jamar Chase closed the season amazingly, but people forget through 6 weeks or through the first month, wide receiver 37 in targets. He only had 18% of the team targets. The first 7 games, he had single-digit targets in 6 of them. It took him a while to get going. These guys that missed all camp, like this missed time is still valuable, even for the guys that have been around. And then you add Debo too to the mix. So I hate to be out on a player. We just begged for him to get a quarterback. Like we're now doing this with Garrett Wilson. We're doing the same thing.
That's right.
We're still waiting for him. But I think the price point is still a little rich when you look under the hood and say like he still didn't have elite usage for a wide receiver and kind of had the big touchdown spike. So it hurts me, but I do like the ADP value of Debo a little bit more.
Rich, it was well worth the wait. At Lord Reeves on Twitter. What do you got coming up on the site?
So I finished the draft guide last week. Last week I did a whole series and just exactly how I'm drafting every position. Like this is my targets, this is the round values, like this is where I want to get guys to jump ADP. These are like my sleeper targets, how I'm doing stuff in auction leagues, all of those things. And I get to work ahead for the one time all year, and it's this. So I've already started to write up some week 1 games and some of the stuff like that for week 1 as we break down all these games. But I'm glad we got to make this happen. I will say this is the most excited I've been for a fantasy season probably in the last decade or so. Like I said, I really think offenses found some answers last year. We saw the kickoff rules influence scoring. Those also got a little bit of a juice this year with the kickoffs going extra 5 yards for touchbacks. I think that the first 2 rounds are as good as we've had in a long time. And I think the top 36ers is as good as it's been in a while. It's just a genuinely good time, I think, to be a fantasy football player.
Buddy, I appreciate you. Thanks.